Daddy? The word stopped Robert Scott's heart. He stood in his own doorway, frozen, staring at something he couldn't understand. His 10-year-old daughter was on her knees, scrubbing the floor in a maid's uniform. Her hands were bleeding. Her face was soaked with tears. And beside her, dressed the same way, was Jennifer, the housemaid he barely knew. Robert dropped his briefcase. What the hell is going on? Robert had been gone for 6 months. Tokyo, Singapore, London, building his company into something powerful. He'd missed Ava's birthday, her school play, half her life, but he'd promised himself this was the last trip. He'd come home and make everything right. He walked through the door expecting his daughter to run to him with that bright smile she used to have. Instead, she flinched when she heard his voice. She was terrified. Jennifer stood up slowly, hands raised like she was trying to calm him down. "Mr. Scott, please, if I could just explain." "Explain what?" Robert's voice cracked. "Why is my daughter dressed like this? Why is she on her knees in her own home?" "She didn't do anything," Ava tried to say, but her voice was so small it barely came out. Then he heard footsteps on the stairs. His wife, Diane, walked down with a cup of coffee in her hand and concern painted across her face. But something about it felt wrong. Too perfect, too practiced. "Robert," she said softly, touching his arm. "Thank God you're here. I just found them like this. I don't know what's been happening while you were gone, but I think Jennifer has been getting too close to Ava, making her do things she shouldn't." Robert looked at his wife, then at Jennifer, then at his daughter. Ava wasn't looking at him. She was looking at Jennifer, like Jennifer was the only person in the world she could trust. And that's when Robert realized something that made his stomach turn. He'd been gone for 6 months, and he had no idea what had been happening in his own house. Someone was lying, and he was about to find out who. What Robert didn't know was that a camera in the corner had recorded everything, not just this moment, but what happened 1 hour before he walked through that door. The truth, the abuse, the cruelty his daughter had been living through, and the one person who'd been protecting her when no one else would. Before we continue, click subscribe, like this video, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Sometimes God places people in our lives not because we asked for them, but because someone we love desperately needs them. Jennifer stepped in when a father was absent. But the question is, are you truly present for the people who need you most? I hope this story reminds you that love isn't just a feeling. It's showing up, even when it's hard, even when no one's watching. Now let's go back to 1 hour before Robert came home. Let's see what really happened. Only moments before Robert walked through that door, his daughter's world was falling apart. It started in the kitchen. Ava was thirsty, that's all. She climbed onto the step stool, the one with the old sunflower stickers her mum put there years ago. Her small hands reached for a glass of water, and it slipped. The glass fell, water splashed across the counter and onto the floor. Ava's heart stopped. She grabbed a towel, her hands shaking, trying to clean it up before. "What did you just do?" Diane's voice came from behind her, cold, angry. "I'm sorry," Ava whispered. "It was an accident. I'll clean it." "An accident?" Diane crossed the room fast. Too fast. She grabbed Ava's arm hard enough to hurt. "You're always breaking things, always making a mess." "I didn't mean to." "You never mean to." Diane's fingers dug deeper into Ava's skin. "But you keep doing it anyway. Maybe it's time you learned what it costs to live in this house." She dragged Ava down the hall. Ava stumbled, tears streaming down her face, trying to keep up. Upstairs, Jennifer was folding laundry when she heard crying. Not the normal cry of a child who fell or got scared. This was different, deeper, like something inside was breaking. Jennifer dropped everything and ran. She found them outside the laundry room. Ava was on the floor, face buried in her hands, shaking. Diane stood over her, holding a black maid's uniform. "Ma'am," Jennifer said carefully. "What happened?" "She spilled water," Diane said without looking at her. "She needs to learn responsibility." "She's just a child," Jennifer said gently. "It was an accident." Diane turned, her eyes cold. "She's careless, spoiled, and she's going to learn what it means to earn her place here." She shoved the uniform toward Jennifer. "Put this on her." Jennifer's stomach dropped. "Ma'am, please." I'm not asking. Jennifer looked at Ava. The little girl was staring up at her with terrified eyes that said, "Please don't leave me." Jennifer knelt beside her and took the uniform. "It's okay, baby," she whispered. "I'm here." Her hands shook as she helped Ava into the rough fabric. It hung too big on the child's thin body. Ava looked so small, so lost. "Now," Diane said, pointing to the living room, "you're going to scrub that floor until it shines. Do you understand?" Ava nodded through her tears. Jennifer stood. "Ma'am, this is too much. She's frightened." "Are you questioning me?" Diane's voice went quiet. "Dangerous." Jennifer swallowed. "I'm asking you to show mercy." Diane smiled. It wasn't kind. "You want to defend her? Fine. Get on your knees too. Both of you." Jennifer's heart pounded. "Mom, do it. Or she does it alone, and I'll make sure she knows you chose to walk away." Jennifer looked at Ava. The little girl was shaking, waiting to see if Jennifer would stay. Jennifer knelt. She picked up a rag from the bucket Diane placed between them. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered to Ava. "I'm right here. You're not alone." Ava sobbed. "I'm sorry, Miss Jennifer." "Shh, this isn't your fault." They scrubbed side by side, Ava's small hands barely able to hold the cloth, Jennifer whispering comfort with every stroke, Diane watching from her chair with that cold smile. That's when Robert opened the door. Robert's eyes locked on Jennifer. She was on her knees beside his daughter, both of them in uniform, both of them looking guilty. His mind tried to make sense of it, tried to find an explanation that didn't tear his world apart. And the only thing he could see was Jennifer, the maid, the woman he barely knew, dressed the same way as his daughter. "Did you do this?" His voice came out harder than he meant. "Did you put her up to this?" Jennifer stood slowly, her movements careful, her hands raised like she was trying to show she meant no harm. "Mr. Scott, please, if you'll just let me explain." "Explain what?" Robert's voice cracked. "My daughter is on her knees, dressed like she works here, and you're right beside her doing the same thing. What am I supposed to think?" "Daddy," she didn't. Ava tried to speak, but her voice was so small it barely made it out. "Sweetheart, it's okay." Robert moved toward her, but Ava flinched. Actually flinched, like she was afraid of what would happen next. That stopped him cold. "Oh, Robert," Diane's voice floated down from the stairs, soft, concerned, perfectly timed. "Thank God you're finally home." She came down slowly, one hand trailing along the railing, the other holding her coffee cup like she was in a movie. Her silk robe was perfectly tied, her hair perfectly styled. Everything about her looked calm, controlled, too controlled. "I just walked in myself," Diane said, reaching for his arm. "I found them like this. I've been so worried about what's been happening while you've been away." Robert looked at his wife, then at Jennifer, then at his daughter. Something didn't fit. "What do you mean? What's been happening?" he asked. Diane's hand tightened on his arm. "She's been overstepping, Robert." She glanced at Jennifer without really looking at her. "Getting too involved with Ava, making her do things. I don't know if it's some kind of game or—" "That's not true." Jennifer's voice was quiet but steady. Diane's eyes flashed. "Excuse me?" "Ma'am." Jennifer didn't look away. "You know that's not what happened here." The air shifted. Robert felt it. Something in Jennifer's voice, something in the way Diane's smile tightened just slightly at the corners. "Are you calling me a liar?" Diane's voice was still soft, but there was steel underneath. "I'm saying there's more to this story." Robert looked at Ava. She was staring at Jennifer like she was the only safe thing in the room. Not at him, not at Diane, at Jennifer. His daughter trusted the maid more than she trusted her own family. That thought hit him like a punch to the chest. "Mr. Scott," Jennifer said carefully, "there's a security camera in the other room, the one near the bookshelf. If you check it, you'll see what really happened." Robert froze. "How do you know about that?" "I saw the technician installing it before you left. Please, just check it." Diane's face flickered, just for a second. Something close to panic crossed her eyes before she smoothed it away. "Robert, don't be ridiculous. She's obviously trying to—" But Robert was already pulling out his phone. His fingers moved across the screen, opening the security app he'd installed months ago. The app he'd almost forgotten about. Diane took a step back. "Robert, this is unnecessary. I'm telling you what I saw." "Then the camera will show the same thing." His voice was flat. The app loaded. Camera feeds appeared. He scrolled through them, finding the one Jennifer mentioned. He pressed play, and his face went white. Robert stared at his phone screen. The footage played in silence, but he didn't need sound to understand what he was seeing. Ava reaching for the glass, it falling, water spilling across the counter. Then Diane storming in, her face twisted with rage, her hand grabbing Ava's arm so hard the child's body jerked sideways, her mouth moving, shouting words Robert couldn't hear but could feel in his chest. Ava trying to apologize, trying to clean it up, her small body trembling. Diane dragging her down the hall. Then Jennifer appearing, stepping between them, her hands raised, trying to calm the situation. Diane shoving the uniform at her, forcing it into Jennifer's hands. Jennifer kneeling beside Ava, not because she wanted to, but because leaving the child alone wasn't an option. Robert's hand shook. He looked up from the phone. His eyes found Diane's. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Robert, you have to understand." "Understand what?" His voice was low, dangerous. "That you put my daughter in a maid's uniform? That you made her scrub floors like she's—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "She needed discipline," Diane said quickly. Her voice was rising now, losing that careful control. "You're never here, Robert. Someone has to teach her consequences." "Consequences?" Robert's voice cracked. "She's 10 years old. She spilled water. She's careless. She destroys things. She needs to learn. She needs a parent." The words exploded out of him. "Not a warden." Diane's face went hard. "So that's it? One video and I'm the villain? What about her?" She pointed at Jennifer. "She's been manipulating Ava for months, making her dependent, acting like some kind of replacement mother." Robert looked at Jennifer. She hadn't moved, hadn't defended herself. She just stood there, hands folded, eyes down, calm, steady, like she'd been carrying this weight for so long she'd learned how to hold it without breaking. "Is that true?" Robert asked her. Jennifer looked up. Her eyes met his. "I love your daughter, Mr. Scott. That's true. But I never tried to replace anyone. I just tried to make sure she knew she wasn't alone." The words hit him like stones. She wasn't alone. Because he'd left her. He'd chosen boardrooms over bedtime stories, deals over dinners, success over his own child. He turned to Ava. She was still on the floor, still in that uniform, clutching her stuffed lion like it was the only thing keeping her together. "Sweetheart," he said, his voice breaking, "why didn't you tell me?" Ava's lip trembled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "She said you wouldn't believe me. She said you'd think I was lying because I didn't like her. She said you'd send me away." Robert's chest caved in. "She said," Ava's voice broke, "she said you'd be happier if I wasn't here." Robert dropped to his knees in front of his daughter. He reached for her, and this time she didn't flinch. She fell into his arms, sobbing against his chest. "I'm so sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry, baby." He looked up at Diane, the woman he'd married, the woman he'd trusted with his daughter. "Pack your things," he said quietly. "You're leaving tonight." Diane's face went pale. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious in my life." "Robert, you're making a mistake." "The mistake," he said, his voice cold, "was ever leaving her alone with you." Diane's mouth opened, but nothing came out. For the first time since he'd known her, she had no words. She turned and walked up the stairs. Her heels clicked against the wood, each step sharper than the last. Robert held his daughter tighter, and over Ava's shoulder he saw Jennifer, still standing there, still steady, still the person who'd protected his child when he hadn't. "Thank you," he whispered. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. Because some things don't need words. The house felt different after Diane left. Quieter, but not peaceful, just empty. Robert sat in the kitchen with Ava curled up beside him on the counter stool. She was still wearing that uniform. He'd tried to help her take it off, but she'd pulled away. Not because she was angry. Because she was scared to let go of Jennifer, who was standing by the sink making hot chocolate. Robert watched them. The way Jennifer moved around his daughter, careful, gentle, like she knew exactly what Ava needed without being told. She poured the hot chocolate into Ava's favorite mug, the one with the chipped handle that Ava refused to throw away because her mother gave it to her. Robert hadn't remembered which mug that was, but Jennifer did. She set it down in front of Ava with a soft smile. "Careful, sweetheart. It's hot." Ava wrapped her small hands around the cup and whispered, "Thank you, Miss Jennifer." Jennifer brushed a strand of hair from Ava's face. A simple gesture, tender, familiar, like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Robert's chest tightened. How many nights had his daughter needed someone to brush her hair back? How many times had she cried herself to sleep while he was on another continent? How many moments like this had he missed? "Mr. Scott," Jennifer said quietly, "would you like some coffee?" He shook his head. "No, thank you." The silence stretched. Jennifer started to excuse herself. "I should go. Let you two." "Stay." The word came out before Robert could stop it. "Please." Jennifer hesitated, then nodded. They sat together at the kitchen table, Ava between them, the three of them in a triangle of unspoken understanding. Robert didn't know what to say, didn't know how to thank someone for doing what he should have been doing all along. "How long?" he finally asked. His voice was rough, tired. Jennifer looked down at her hands. "About 3 months, after you left for Singapore." 3 months, a quarter of a year. His daughter had been suffering for 3 months, and he hadn't known. "Why didn't you call me?" he asked. "Why didn't you tell me what was happening?" Jennifer's eyes met his. There was no judgment there, just sadness. "She threatened me, Mr. Scott. Said, if I told you, she'd make sure you didn't believe me. Said she'd tell you I was stealing, that I was the problem." She paused. "And honestly, I didn't know if you'd listen." The words cut deeper than she probably meant them to, because she was right. If she'd called him in the middle of a board meeting and told him his wife was abusing his daughter, would he have believed her? Would he have dropped everything and come home? Or would he have told her he'd handle it later? Robert looked at Ava. She'd fallen asleep against Jennifer's shoulder, the hot chocolate barely touched. Jennifer held her without thinking, one arm wrapped protectively around the child, the other hand resting gently on Ava's back. Like she'd held her before, like this was normal. "She trusts you," Robert said quietly. Jennifer looked down at Ava, her expression soft. "She shouldn't have had to. But she did, and you stayed." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. "I couldn't leave her alone, Mr. Scott. I couldn't walk away knowing what would happen when no one was watching." Robert's throat closed. This woman, this stranger he'd hired and barely spoken to, had protected his daughter when he hadn't, had stood between Ava and cruelty, had chosen to kneel beside a child who wasn't hers rather than let her suffer alone. "I don't know how to thank you," he whispered. Jennifer shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. Just be here. That's all she's ever wanted." Robert looked at his daughter sleeping in another woman's arms, and he realized something that broke him completely. He'd been so busy trying to give Ava everything. He'd forgotten to give her the one thing she actually needed. Him. Robert carried Ava upstairs while Jennifer followed quietly behind. They reached Ava's room, the one with the pale yellow walls her mother had painted before she died. The room still smelled faintly of lavender from the sachets tucked in the dresser drawers. Robert laid Ava down gently and pulled the blanket over her. She stirred slightly, reaching for something in her sleep. Jennifer moved past him without a word and placed the stuffed lion in Ava's arms. The little girl's fingers curled around it immediately, and she settled. Robert watched. Jennifer knew exactly where the lion went, knew which side of the bed Ava slept on, knew to leave the lamp on low because Ava was afraid of complete darkness. She knew his daughter better than he did. They stepped into the hallway, leaving the door cracked open just enough to let the light in. "Mr. Scott," Jennifer said softly, "there's something you should see." She led him downstairs to a small room off the kitchen, the one where the staff kept their things. Jennifer opened her locker and pulled out a worn notebook. The cover was bent, the pages creased from being opened and closed so many times. She handed it to him. "I've been writing down everything," she said quietly. "Every time she hurt Ava, every time she said something cruel, every time Ava cried herself to sleep. I didn't know what else to do." Robert opened the notebook. The first entry was dated 3 months ago. June 14th, Mrs. Scott told Ava she'd never be as pretty as her mother. Ava didn't eat dinner, found her crying in the bathroom. His hands started shaking. June 22nd, Ava wasn't allowed to leave her room all day because she laughed too loud at breakfast. Mrs. Scott said she was being disrespectful. July 8th, Mrs. Scott called Ava a mistake, said her father only keeps her around out of obligation. Robert's vision blurred. Page after page, entry after entry. Months of pain his daughter had endured while he was closing deals and chasing success. August 3rd, Ava asked if her daddy still loved her. I told her yes, but I don't think she believed me. Robert's knees buckled. He sat down hard on the bench by the wall, the notebook still open in his hands. Why didn't she tell me? His voice cracked. Why didn't she say something on our video calls? Jennifer sat beside him. She tried once. About a month ago. She started to tell you something, and Mrs. Scott walked into the room. After you hung up, Mrs. Scott told Ava that if she ever said anything again, you'd send her to boarding school, that you'd think she was lying to get attention. Robert's chest felt like it was caving in. She made Ava believe you didn't want to hear it, Jennifer continued, that you were too busy, too important, that complaining would just make you love her less. Robert buried his face in his hands. He'd failed her. Completely. Utterly. Failed her. I should have been here, he whispered. I should have seen it. Jennifer's hand rested gently on his shoulder. You're here now. That's what matters. Is it? Robert looked up at her, his eyes red. Is it enough, after everything she's been through? Jennifer's voice was steady, certain. She's been waiting for you to come home, Mr. Scott, not because she needed you to save her, but because she just wanted her dad. The words broke something inside him. All the money, all the success, all the deals and the power and the empire he'd built. None of it mattered, because the one person who needed him most had been suffering in silence, and he'd been too far away to hear her. Robert closed the notebook carefully, like it was something sacred. What do I do now? He asked. How do I fix this? Jennifer looked toward the stairs, toward Ava's room. You stay, you listen, you show her that you're not going anywhere. She paused. And you let her be angry, let her cry, let her tell you everything she's been holding inside, even if it hurts to hear. Robert nodded, wiping his eyes. He'd spent 6 months building something that would last. Now he had to rebuild something he'd almost destroyed. His daughter's trust. Robert didn't sleep that night. He sat in Ava's doorway, watching her breathe, watching her clutch that stuffed lion, watching for signs that she was safe, that she was really okay. But every time she shifted in her sleep, his heart jumped. Every small sound made him wonder if she was crying, if she was having nightmares about everything Diane had done. He'd called his lawyer at midnight, left a message about divorce papers, about restraining orders, about making sure Diane never came near his daughter again. But even as he said the words, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered, "What if it's too late? What if you've already lost her?" Morning came too fast. Robert was making breakfast when the doorbell rang. He opened the door to find a woman in an expensive suit standing on his porch. Her expression was cold, professional. "Robert Scott?" "Yes." She handed him an envelope. "You've been served." His stomach dropped. He opened it right there. The words jumped off the page like knives. Emergency custody petition. Unstable home environment. Inappropriate relationship between employer and employee. Endangerment of minor child. Robert's hands shook. "What is this?" The woman's voice was flat. "Mrs. Scott is filing for custody of your daughter. She's citing concerns about the child's welfare and your relationship with the housemaid." The word hung in the air like poison. "There is no relationship," Robert said through clenched teeth. "Jennifer protected my daughter when my wife was abusing her. That will be for the court to decide." The woman turned to leave, then paused. "You should also know, Mrs. Scott has witnesses. Friends who will testify to your extended absences and to the closeness between you and Miss Gibson." She walked away before Robert could respond. He stood there, holding the papers, his mind racing. Diane was going to twist everything. She was going to make Jennifer look like a homewrecker, make him look like a negligent father, make Ava look like a pawn in some affair that didn't exist. And the worst part? Some of it was true. He had been absent. He had been negligent. He had left his daughter vulnerable. "Mr. Scott?" He turned. Jennifer stood in the hallway, her face pale. "I heard," she said quietly. "The doorbell woke me." Robert looked at the papers in his hand, then at Jennifer, this woman who'd sacrificed everything to protect his daughter. "She's coming after you too," he said. "She's going to try to destroy you." Jennifer's jaw tightened. "Let her try." "Jennifer, you don't understand. She has money, lawyers, friends in high places. She's going to dig into your past. She's going to twist everything you've done into something ugly." "I know." Jennifer's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "But I'm not leaving, Ava. I don't care what she does to me." Robert stared at her. This woman, who owed him nothing, who could walk away right now and protect herself. But she wouldn't, because she loved his daughter, more than he'd shown he did. The thought hit him like a punch. "I can't ask you to do this," Robert said. "I can't let you sacrifice yourself." "You're not asking." Jennifer's eyes met his. "I'm choosing." Upstairs, a door opened. They both looked up to see Ava standing at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, holding her lion. Her voice was small, scared. "Is she coming back?" Robert's heart shattered, because his daughter wasn't asking if Diane was coming back. She was asking if the nightmare was starting again. He climbed the stairs and knelt in front of her. "No, baby. I promise you, she's not coming back." "But what if she takes me away?" Ava's eyes filled with tears. "What if the court says I have to go with her?" Robert pulled her into his arms. "That's not going to happen." But even as he said it, holding his daughter tight, he felt the weight of the papers in his hand, and he knew the battle had only just begun. Robert sat in his office that afternoon with the door closed. The custody papers were spread across his desk. Legal language, cold facts, a twisted version of his life written by Diane's lawyers. Father repeatedly absent for extended periods. Child left in care of household staff. Inappropriate emotional dependency between minor and employee. Every word felt like an accusation, because some of it was true. He had been gone. He had left Ava with people he barely knew. He had put his company before his daughter. And now someone else was paying the price. Jennifer. A knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in." Jennifer stepped inside, her movements hesitant. "I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to say, if you need me to leave, I understand." Robert looked up. "Leave? For the case?" Jennifer's voice was quiet but steady. "If my being here makes things harder for you and Ava, I can go. I can find another job. Her voice caught. "I just want what's best for her." Robert stood. "You think leaving is what's best for her?" "I think losing her would destroy me," Jennifer said, her eyes filling with tears. "But I'd rather leave now than be the reason she gets taken from you." Robert walked around the desk. "You're not the reason. I am." Jennifer shook her head. "You were working, providing for her." "I was hiding." The words came out raw, honest. "After my wife died, I didn't know how to be a father without her. Didn't know how to look at Ava without seeing everything I'd lost. So I ran. I buried myself in work and told myself I was doing it for her. But I was just running from the pain." His voice broke. "And while I was running, my daughter was drowning. And you," he looked at Jennifer, "you were the only one who jumped in after her." Jennifer wiped her eyes. "She's a beautiful child, Mr. Scott. She deserves to be loved, not hurt." "I know." Robert's chest felt tight. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making up for the fact that I let her down." They stood there in silence for a moment. Then Jennifer spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do we do now?" Robert looked at the papers on his desk, at the lies, at the twisted truth. "We fight," he said. "We show the court exactly what happened. We show them who Diane really is. And we show them that Ava is safe here, with us." Jennifer nodded, but her hands were trembling. "She's going to come after me," she said quietly. "She's going to dig up everything from my past, things I'm not proud of, things I've tried to leave behind. Then we'll face it together." Robert's voice was firm. "Whatever she throws at us, we face it together." Jennifer looked up at him. Why are you doing this? Why are you risking everything for me? Because you risked everything for my daughter. Robert's eyes held hers. Because you did what I should have done. And because if I lose you, I lose the person who's been keeping Ava's heart beating. Footsteps in the hallway. They both turned to see Ava standing in the doorway. She'd changed out of the uniform finally. Now, she wore her favorite sweater, the yellow one her mother gave her. Are you leaving, Miss Jennifer? Her voice was small, scared. Jennifer knelt down immediately. No, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Jennifer pulled Ava into her arms. I promise. Ava buried her face in Jennifer's shoulder. I don't want you to go. I don't want to lose you too. Robert watched them. His daughter, and the woman who'd saved her, and he made a decision right there. Whatever it took, whatever the cost, he would protect them both. Because family isn't just blood. It's the people who stay when everything falls apart. 3 weeks later, they sat in family court. The room was smaller than Robert expected, colder, the kind of place where lives were decided by strangers in suits. Diane sat across the aisle with her lawyer, perfectly dressed, perfectly composed. She looked like the victim, like the woman who'd been wronged. Robert's lawyer, Martin Chen, leaned over and whispered, "Remember, stay calm, let the truth speak." But Robert's hands were shaking, because sitting beside him was Ava, wearing her yellow sweater, holding Jennifer's hand so tight her knuckles were white. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense expression. Judge Harrison. She looked at the papers in front of her, then at the people in her courtroom. Let's begin. Diane's lawyer went first. He painted a picture of a negligent father, a man who abandoned his daughter for months at a time, a household in chaos, an employee who overstepped boundaries and manipulated a vulnerable child. Robert listened to himself being torn apart. Then it was their turn. Martin stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence." He played the security footage. The courtroom went silent. On the screen, Diane grabbed Ava's arm, screamed at her, forced her into the uniform, watched with satisfaction as the child scrubbed the floor on her knees. Robert heard someone in the gallery gasp. Diane's face went pale. Then Martin called witnesses. Mrs. Delgado from Child Protective Services took the stand. "I've interviewed the child multiple times. She's bonded with Miss Gibson in a healthy, protective way. The abuse came from Mrs. Scott, not from neglect by the father or manipulation by the employee." Ava's teacher, Miss Brennan, was next. Ava was withdrawn all last year, anxious. She barely spoke in class. But in the last few weeks, since her father came home and Mrs. Scott left, she's completely changed. She's smiling again, participating. She told me that Miss Jennifer taught her she was worth loving. Robert's throat tightened. Then Dr. Raymond, the child psychologist. "This is a classic case of emotional abuse from a step-parent and a protective attachment formed with a caregiver. Jennifer Gibson provided what we call a protective factor. She quite literally may have saved this child's psychological well-being." Finally, Martin called Jennifer. She walked to the stand slowly, her hands folded. She looked small up there, vulnerable. Diane's lawyer stood. "Miss Gibson, isn't it true you have a criminal record?" Jennifer didn't flinch. "I was arrested when I was 16. I stole baby formula and diapers for my little sister because our mother was sick and we had no money. The charges were dropped after I completed community service. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through school." The lawyer tried to twist it, make it sound worse than it was, but Jennifer's voice stayed steady. "I'm not ashamed of protecting my sister, just like I'm not ashamed of protecting Ava." "Did you develop feelings for Mr. Scott?" the lawyer pressed. "I developed love for a child who needed someone." Jennifer's eyes were clear. "That's all I've ever wanted, to make sure she knew she wasn't alone." Diane's lawyer sat down. Then Martin asked one question. "Miss Gibson, why did you stay?" Jennifer's voice broke slightly. "Because when you see a child suffering, you don't look away. You don't calculate the cost. You stay, even when it's hard. Even when no one's watching, you stay." The courtroom was silent. Judge Harrison made a note. Then she looked up. "I'd like to speak with the child. In chambers." Robert's heart stopped. Ava stood, still holding Jennifer's hand. "It's okay, sweetheart," Jennifer whispered. "Just tell her the truth." Ava nodded and followed the judge through the side door. And Robert sat there, waiting, praying that his daughter's voice would finally be heard. Ava was in the judge's chambers for 20 minutes. To Robert, it felt like a lifetime. When the door finally opened, Ava walked out with red eyes but something else in her face, something lighter, like she'd finally been allowed to put down a weight she'd been carrying alone. Judge Harrison followed her out and took her seat. The courtroom held its breath. "I've made my decision," she said. Robert's heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. "The petition for custody is denied." Diane's face crumbled. "The evidence is clear," Judge Harrison continued. "Mrs. Scott engaged in emotional and physical abuse of this child. Miss Gibson acted with courage and compassion in protecting her. Mr. Scott, while absent, has taken immediate and decisive action to ensure his daughter's safety." She looked directly at Robert. "Your daughter doesn't need a perfect father. She needs a present one. Be that man." Robert nodded, unable to speak. "As for Miss Gibson," the judge's voice softened, "you did what too few people have the courage to do. You saw a child in pain, and you refused to look away. That's not manipulation. That's love." Jennifer's tears finally fell. "A restraining order will be issued. Mrs. Scott is not to contact the child or come within 500 feet of the family home." Judge Harrison brought down her gavel. "This case is closed." The courtroom erupted in quiet relief. Robert turned to Ava and pulled her into his arms. She clung to him, crying into his shoulder, not from sadness this time, but from something that felt like freedom. "I'm here, baby," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere ever again." 6 months later, Christmas morning. The house felt different now, warm, full of laughter that echoed off the walls and actually meant something. Robert sat on the floor by the tree with Ava, wrapping paper scattered everywhere. She was opening gifts with the kind of joy he'd forgotten children could have, pure, unguarded, real. Jennifer came in carrying mugs of hot chocolate, wearing comfortable clothes, not a uniform. Never a uniform again. Robert had made her Ava's legal guardian, given her a title that matched what she'd always been, family. "Miss Jennifer, look!" Ava held up a small ornament she'd made in art class, a tiny angel with words written on it in careful handwriting. "Family is who stays." Jennifer knelt beside her. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Can we put it on the tree?" Of course. They hung it together, right in the front, where everyone could see. Robert watched them, his daughter, and the woman who'd saved her. The doorbell rang. Robert's parents arrived, arms full of gifts and warmth. His mother hugged Jennifer like she was her own daughter. "Thank you," she whispered to Jennifer. "Thank you for loving her when we didn't know she needed it." They gathered around the table for dinner. The long table that used to feel cold and empty now felt full, alive. Robert stood, raising his glass. 6 months ago, I thought I had everything, he said. Money, success, power, but I was empty. I'd lost sight of what actually mattered. He looked at Ava. My daughter showed me what courage looks like. She survived something no child should have to face. Then, at Jennifer. And this woman, she showed me what love really means. Not words, not promises, but showing up, staying, protecting someone else's child like she was your own. His voice broke. I don't deserve either of you, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. Ava climbed into Robert's lap and whispered, I love you, Daddy. I love you too, baby, so much. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Robert stood in Ava's doorway watching her sleep. She looked peaceful, safe, like a child should look. Jennifer appeared beside him, her voice soft. She's going to be okay. Because of you, Robert said. Because of all of us, Jennifer corrected. Because you came home. Because you chose to see. Because you fought for her. Robert looked at Jennifer, really looked at her. This woman who'd asked for nothing but had given everything. I don't know what we'd do without you, he said quietly. Jennifer smiled. You'll never have to find out. They stood there together, in the quiet, and Robert thought about how wrong he'd been about everything. Success wasn't built in boardrooms. It was built in moments like this, in bedtime stories, and hot chocolate, and showing up, even when it's hard. Family wasn't just biology. It was choice. It was the people who stayed when everyone else walked away. And love, real love, wasn't about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It was kneeling beside a frightened child and whispering, "You're not alone." It was coming home. It was staying. It was being present even when you'd failed before. Robert looked at the ornament on the tree downstairs, glowing softly in the light. Family is who stays. And for the first time in years, he finally understood what that meant.